Welcome to the Planet MicroCap Showcase. I'd like to introduce our next presenter at our event. It is Fadi Bakhtar. He is the President and Chief Commercial Officer for Petros Pharmaceuticals. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is PTPI on NASDAQ. And with that, Fadi, take it away.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate that. Good to be with you all and to have the opportunity to present to you a fairly exciting story, PTPI, Petros Pharmaceuticals. Tune in. I think as we go through this presentation, there are going to be about 3 to 4 different value propositions, each with their own catalysts that might be worth tuning into. We are a men's health company, and we aim to disrupt and reinvent the thought of men's health therapy. Men's health is significantly underserved and requires a great deal of insight, which we believe we have. Continue on. As a disclaimer, as always, there are ambitious statements. There are statements that we made that are estimated, forecasted, attempted, but wherever there is strong reward, there is always strong risk. So we suggest that you continue to stay tuned into our 10Ks and 10Qs and to continue to look at our website, petrospharmaceuticals.com, for ongoing updates and information where we will try to keep everyone up to date appropriately. Let's dive into our stock profile. As you'll see, the 52-week range, our stock has tremendous potential. Our low is $1.05, and we've reached as high as $5.20. We are a high-risk, high-reward stock, and we have tremendous value in how we think we're going to be able to achieve what I'm about to share with you. Today, I think we are roughly in that $1.27, $1.10 range, which speaks to the tremendous potential. So as I mentioned catalysts, as I mentioned milestones, tune in. As you'll see, you'll be getting in relatively on the ground floor with tremendous opportunity for growth and tremendous opportunity for value to come. If you believe in our story, we highly recommend you join us for the ride. We have an average daily volume of 1.8 million, common shares outstanding of 20 million. And again, you'll notice on the left-hand side, the range of the stock, and it shows its responsiveness to certain milestones and to certain catalysts, of which we anticipate having more to come. It is worth mentioning, significant ownership to our organization is with Juggernaut Capital Partners. They have about 28% of the organization in stocks. They've been longtime supporters of the vision, longtime supporters of the organization, and they continue to ride this journey with us, and we're happy to have them on. They are a significant institutional ownership to organization that has credibility, and we'll talk more about why that is, especially when we talk about over-the-counter prospects for our ED prescription medication. More to come on that. So let's break it down. I talked about 3 to 4 high-value propositions to this organization and to this ticker. Let's quickly dissect them at a high level. So Stendra. Stendra is a licensed, patent-protected pharmaceutical asset in market today, licensed through Vivus, from Vivus, excuse me, and it is among the class of the Viagras and the Cialises and the Levitras of the world. That is our class of medication. Stendra is the last standing patent-protected asset in the US, prescription that is. The opportunity remains huge. So we talked about prescription, commercial prescription ED medication in market today. We'll talk about where that's going. But then let's talk about the future. The opportunity of the ED market domestically and internationally continues to grow significantly. In fact, it's estimated to reach $4.7 billion by 2026. The US naturally will be driving 30% of that growth, so approximately $1.5 billion. The ED market, can be said, is just getting started. There's so much more, and you'll see how many of those patients have actually engaged in prescription therapy to date, leaving a tremendous population that's still waiting for the right formula, the right opportunity to engage with their prescription-grade erectile dysfunction medication. We'll talk more about that in greater detail. But to piggyback off that, OTC status, over-the-counter status. Today, there are no prescription erectile dysfunction medication that are designated as over-the-counter opportunities or offerings. We believe we have an asset that could get there, and we'll show you exactly why we believe that and how we hope to get there. Obviously, guided by the FDA and other barriers and other opportunities. We'll go into that in great detail. There's a high-risk, high-reward feature to our stock. The fact that we can potentially take a prescription ED medication, patent protected today, and work with the FDA to bring it over the counter, the first of its kind. We'll talk about why that's important and why there's a massive community of patients that have not mobilized because of the prescription hurdle of getting an ED medication predominantly. We recently signed a tremendous collaboration with Mass General. We'll talk about that collaboration in a minute. We have commercially available device in our portfolio, devices, and we are collaborating with Mass General for a sponsored research agreement and an option to license. We'll talk about that technology and that potential integration in more detail, but that's another value proposition. We hope to bring something that could essentially be the first of its kind on the market. And lastly, we have an experience management team. We'll talk about why that experience is valuable, why there is competitive advantage in where they've been, what they've done, and what we're going to do together. So stay tuned to these features. So let's talk about the ED market. This is critical because this lays the foundation. Some may think that with Viagra and Cialis being on the market for roughly 2 decades, that the ED market is saturated. That is in fact not the case. We have about 30 million men estimated to suffer from erectile dysfunction in this country. Of those 30 million men, it may or may not shock you, shock me, only 25% of those men have been estimated to actually get a prescription ED medication. That means 75% of the 30 million men in this country have not yet mobilized to get their prescription ED medication for a number of reasons, predominantly due to access, stigma. They do not want to make an appointment with their physician. They do not want to ask for erectile dysfunction therapy. They do not want to admit in public that they have erectile dysfunction. Stigma is still a significant component to that issue. We hope to address that access and stigma component, and we'll talk about the OTC value to that effect shortly. Here's the other surprise element. 1 in 4 of ED patients have actually been estimated to be under 40 years old, which means this is no longer, quote unquote, an elderly gentleman's condition. This is in fact showing to be a situation that affects even those under 40 years old. So the demographic, the 30 million men, may in fact be greater, considering that segment of the population that we've never factored for before in the past. So keep that in mind. A tremendous market opportunity that is significantly underserved and a massive population that has not yet been unearthed. We think we have a value that will potentially mobilize, engage, and awaken a good portion of that unearthed patient population. So stay tuned to that value in a second. So let's talk about over-the-counter. There are essentially a couple of shots on goal, a couple of opportunities to take a product from prescription only to over-the-counter designation. Over-the-counter designation can be identified in 2 predominant pathways. One is by way of technology-assisted medication, so non-prescription, no prescription necessary from the physician, but there's a technology that assists the patient with self-selecting correctly and appropriately. FDA takes a significant role in that, in approving the technology to ensure it does its work, and therefore affording the lack of a prescription. So technology-assisted non-prescription pathway is critical. Something we're looking into, something we're actually actively pursuing as well. The other side of over-the-counter is prescription over-the-counter switch from prescription to over-the-counter pure. Meaning, imagine a product on the shelf of a retail pharmacy where a patient enters and is able to purchase that formerly prescription-only medication, now strictly over-the-counter. Think of Flonase, think of Zyrtec, think of Zantac, think of one-step Plan B one-step, which we'll talk about our relationship with that asset here in this presentation. But think of those types of prescription to over-the-counter switches, of which is also on our strategy roadmap and on our radar. We'll talk more about why we think and why we have pursued this path with confidence. Our pharmaceutical grade asset, currently on market, commercially available, revenue generating, Stendra. I'll urge everyone to go on to Stendra.com, learn more about Stendra, its safety, its efficacy, and its profile in general. Stendra is currently available in market, once again, prescription only. And it is important to understand that as this market evolves, we've already begun to meet that evolution in prescription world and prescription land today. We've partnered with a significantly well-known and proficient telemedicine provider in market today. We've been with them now for a little over 2 years, and we've actually realized and experienced tremendous growth by way of their channel. Telemedicine is a significant pathway to the future, to engage the patient in the convenience of their home, their mobile phone, synchronous and asynchronous alike. It is a phenomenal way to reduce the hurdle of a patient engagement to physician. And we happen to be on the forefront of that, along with this key telemedicine provider. We're happy to be with them and in partnership with them. We made that announcement recently. We urge you to go check out our press releases and our press release history. This was announced, I believe, late last year. So look for that on petrospharma.com. We also intend to seek the new frontier of greater consumer access. We talked about over-the-counter or non-prescription by way of technology assistance. It is one of our predominant goals and efforts to bring prescription-grade erectile dysfunction medication to patient access like never before. So stay tuned as to how we're going to get there. It is a significant pathway to the future. We think Stendra is, in our opinion, a great option for that designation and potentially the first mover in that space. So let's talk about the over-the-counter status. In the next slide, so stay tuned, we're going to talk about the timeline, what we've done and where we're going. But essentially, we're currently working with the FDA. So this is not something we hope to begin. This is not something that we hope to start. This is something that we've begun and we've been working on now for about 24 to 30 months. And we've achieved several different milestones. We've established a draft label. We'll talk more about that on the next slide. We've got a connection with the FDA for a pre-IND coming soon. And we've also established a label comprehension study. So among this series of studies required, we've achieved a label comprehension. We believe it's pivot grade. And in that label comprehension study, take a look at our most recent press release. We had remarkable and very impressive results in how well the layman consumer understood our draft label. And we'll talk about how that fits in the total pipeline. We have strategic alliances. So we'll talk about Plan B one step. We'll talk about Foundation Consumer Healthcare. We'll talk about the management that led that prescription drug to over-the-counter, how they sit on our board, offer the resources and network, and how we have a special competitive and tacit knowledge base that can help us get there. We think we could be the first movers in the prescription ED space to over-the-counter. Let's talk about the pathway. So I'll draw your attention to the bottom left. So the concept pathway to RX to OTC essentially includes the following. You have to develop a draft label. That draft label basically takes your prescription label and puts it into a consumer-friendly label. This is reviewed, approved, and guided by the FDA. You then take that draft label, you put it through a number of studies. Label comprehension, which we just talked about. And as you'll see on the timeline above, we've already established a couple of pilot studies in label comprehension, which gave us the learnings necessary to go to a pivot grade label comprehension study with well over 400 patients. And that's pertinent to that recent press release with the remarkable and impressive results. So after label comprehension, you generate one at least self-selection study for general population, and potentially sometimes the FDA will require specific populations for that self-selection study. Again, this guides the consumer and tests the consumers as to how well they self-select based on their appropriateness of profile. And lastly, the actual use study. That is where product actually meets self-selection appropriateness. It is physician overseen, and that is generally considered to be among, if not the last final phase of studies for over-the-counter designation. So where are we? As we talked about before, we've established a draft OTC label. We've launched and generated and executed a pivot grade label comprehension study. We received those validated results early this year. We do have a pre-IND with FDA scheduled for the first half of this year. We're looking forward to launching and pressure testing our data with the FDA, by the FDA, and getting guidance as to the next steps. We have also launched 2 self-selection studies, one of them in general population. These are pilot grade. So these are essentially done for us to learn, which could then lead us to a pivot grade self-selection. So we've done one in a general population, and we actually did one also in nitrate users. Both are in process and coming to fruition and conclusion here shortly, which we'll announce the validated results when they're ready. Pre-IND FDA will be the next pivotal milestone. We talked about catalysts. The next pivotal milestone to this process is number one, the early results from the self-selection study general population, the early results from the self-selection study in nitrate users, which are a patient type that is of particular interest to the FDA. And then also to follow, the next milestone / catalyst will be the pre-IND feedback from FDA as to how these studies in both design, structure, and results are matching up with the recommended and suggested pathway. After the pre-IND FDA, we are going to look to establish our next roadmap based on that FDA feedback. Do we have to go back and redo our pivot grade label comprehension study? How are we going to readjust our self-selection studies? And maybe perhaps how do we have to adjust even our draft label? So based on FDA feedback will indicate where we go next. Nevertheless, it's important to note here that we've achieved tremendous progress in this pathway. And a previous catalyst was when we announced the label comprehension positive results. We anticipate additional announcements to the Stendra OTC program to be additional catalysts and milestones to watch out for and to tune into. The next chapter that's a value proposition to our organization is an unprecedented therapeutic candidate option. Let's talk about Peyronie disease. Many of you may have seen the commercial of a number of things. There's the bent carrot, for example, there's the bent beer bottle, a number of non-branded and branded commercials and awareness campaigns around this condition of Peyronie disease, a tremendously debilitating condition. It is a fibrotic condition. After several micro injuries, the penis sometimes will actually heal by way of fibrotic plaques and scar tissue. Those fibrotic scars and tissue plaques begin to form curvature or deformities or abnormalities in the penile body. It is significantly debilitating, affecting both the male patient and their partner in tremendous ways. Psychosocial and psychosexually, it is tremendously debilitating as well. Keep in mind, the only current array of therapeutics available today are a series of injections or invasive surgery, and lastly, the traction devices. Nothing non-invasive. There's nothing available that is topical, let alone non-invasive. This is estimated to affect approximately 11 million men in the US. So a significant opportunity to develop groundbreaking, innovative, first-in-class therapeutic, which takes us to H100. Our candidate, our asset in development that speaks to potentially becoming the first ever topical non-invasive formulation for Peyronie disease. It's investigational. We have requested a pre-IND with FDA. So another catalyst that we talked about, another milestone, is look for that feedback from FDA. And we hope to make announcements and share those findings and feedback from the FDA shortly. We have ambitions and hope to be able to execute the development pathway of H100 by way of 505(b)(2) designation. And that is essentially a designation that allows a product to leverage the clinical and non-clinical data of an existing pharmaceutical to help make the development pathway highly efficient and helps establish just the need for a bridge study so that you can piggyback on that initial approval asset. So it's a phenomenally efficient way to bring a product to market, and it speaks to the legacy data that's on file for that particular formulation. So we anticipate, we have ambitions to achieve 505(b)(2) designation in guidance with FDA. Secondly, the penile tissue is very difficult to permeate. So one of the things we hope to be able to achieve, and we hope to get FDA guidance on this, is to be able to leverage nanotechnology within our formulation to enhance permeability of the product through the penile tissue in order for it to address the scar tissue. These are elements, and again, I'll talk about catalysts and milestones to be able to achieve progress on any of those fronts. Stay tuned, that will bring tremendous value to our story, tremendous value to this asset, and it will make it essentially the first mover and the first of its kind in terms of FDA approval, FDA development, and clinical development alike. Let's talk about what this product looked like in a pilot study. So the reason we got very excited about this product is, number one, there are no topical non-invasive therapeutics out there. Number two, the inflammatory cascade in the penis is not being addressed by any of the current therapeutics anyway. So this pilot study essentially took the formulation, nicardipine being the most active and potentially the solely active pharmaceutical ingredient within this formulation, and applied to the penis, especially where Peyronie was present, where there was a curvature present, there was pain, and there was potentially even shortening. This pilot study took H100 in about 22 patients. It was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study. It increased mean stretched penile length by 22%. That's usually a marker of plaque shortening due to plaque, and also reduced curvature by about 40.8%, roughly just under 41%. It reduced mean pain level by about 85%. Very strong early findings in this pilot study, which got us excited to understand that this could be a tremendously contributory therapeutic. In addition to being non-invasive and topical, it has tremendous efficacy potential. And we looked forward to engaging the FDA with this topical formulation and hopefully providing men with this condition an opportunity to take early action in the Peyronie's, but also ongoing chronic action pertaining to their Peyronie's before having to go invasive. So more to come on this in its development pathway. We talk about catalysts and milestones. Please look for announcements and progress made on this asset and feedback from the FDA and/or development milestones as they are announced. So let's talk about the other component of our commercially available revenue-generating device portfolio. These devices, Osbon Recade and its series of models, and Postivac and its series of models, two brands that are considered to be market leaders. They've been on the market for many years. They're ideal for erectile dysfunction, for both sexual engagement, but also rehabilitation post-radical prostatectomy, for example. These two devices continue to be revenue generating for us. And we look to grow those devices both domestically and internationally. We are able to sell these internationally. We've actually opened up several international markets and several international distributors. So we're excited about this device continuing to be a staple in the therapy of erectile dysfunction. This next part speaks to a milestone that I'd like everybody to tune into. We recently announced a collaboration with the Wellman Center of Massachusetts General Hospital. This is a very exciting collaboration for us. Mass General, as I'll quote it, Mass General has actually established a technology that's actually in use today, and it's available, it's patent protected. It is remarkable innovation by Mass General and the Wellman Center. This tissue-specific oxygenation sensor has the potential of potentially integrating with our devices, with our ED devices. And it's going to help a patient assess and address how well their penile tissue is being oxygenated. So they'll be able to literally have a biosensor that could be leveraged at home, that could be mobile app friendly, and potentially communicate the results to the physician. So both patient and physician will be integrated. They'll both see the same numbers. The patient gets to have greater control at home therapy, while the physician sees their numbers. The idea here is to try to fight against penile fibrosis, hypoxia, penile tissue hypoxia, which is lack of oxygenation, and to ensure that penile therapy is driving its intended result. It's the first penile tissue biosensor potentially of its kind. Once the technology is validated, we'll be validating it in a sponsored research agreement with Mass General, with a follow-on, if validated, if successful, option to license exclusively. Excuse me. A catalyst to tune into, a catalyst to watch out for, is if this technology is successful in integrating with our devices. I'll invite everybody to tune in and potentially be a part of the story even before this announcement. This potential success, high risk, high reward, this potential success, which could also end up not being successful, but this potential success would essentially result in the first ever at-home biosensor, penile tissue biosensor that communicates to both patient and physician alike. The patient would then be able to monitor their penile oxygenation levels throughout their day and week and the like. Phenomenal technology prospect. Very excited to see where it goes. This is a milestone, and this is a potential catalyst that I'll recommend for everybody to tune into and potentially be a part of the story before the catalyst potentially even hits the market if it were to. So we talked about our management team. We talked about taking a prescription grade medication to over the counter. This is another value proposition that I'd like everybody to tune into. This is not ordinary. This is extraordinary. So between John Schulman and Greg Bradley, so Greg Bradley is president and CEO of Foundation Consumer Healthcare. They are the drivers of Plan B One Step. They helped bring Plan B One Step from prescription to over the counter, which led it to becoming the #1 selling SKU in the US. Greg Bradley and Foundation Consumer Healthcare, they are a part of John Schulman's Juggernaut Capital Partners portfolio. So John Schulman has a tremendous arsenal of consumer-friendly, consumer high-value organizations, among them ZOA with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and among others, Foundation Consumer Healthcare. These are individuals that understand the consumer mindset, understand the policy landscape, understand the value and the journey between prescription to over-the-counter achievement. They have offered their network, their resources, their knowledge base, which helps guide us and give us confidence that we have a real shot, a fighting chance at potentially taking Stendra prescription today, Stendra prescription grade ED medication to over-the-counter prospect, whether it's through non-prescription technology assisted or pure over-the-counter on the shelf, the same way Plan B One Step is today, or potentially a combination. So it's not a mutually exclusive proposition. We have options, and both are going to be tremendously unhindering the prescription process that a consumer has to go through, that a male patient has to go through. So both would be successes. Stay tuned. We're excited to have both of them on our board. John Schulman is executive chairman of our organization. Greg Bradley is on our board as well. I'll toss my profile in there to help. I've been a part of tremendous companies, tremendous products, from high grade, hospital grade, ICU antibiotics, to antidepressants, to drug modalities, drug rehab modalities, that is, from alcohol to opioids, and have experienced a tremendous journey of success. Mergers and acquisitions, product milestones, and product successes have led my path. I've learned from the best. I've been a fly on the wall on many occasions. I've been a contributor on many occasions, and I've been a driver on many occasions. Love the journey, committed to the journey, and full-heartedly believe that we are sitting on 3 or 4 predominant value propositions that differentiate us from other organizations, and at a time where one could enter our organization on the ground floor. What we're about to achieve, what we're about to aim to achieve, and what we're ambitious to achieve will be landmark achievements on a number of fronts. So opportunity summary, let's review in quick format. So today we have commercially revenue generating assets, both prescription and device. It's important to tune into both in their performance today, but also in their evolution tomorrow. These are catalysts. The catalysts are this: sales revenue by Stendra through the telemedicine provider or through prescription in the field, physician-driven revenue. It's important to tune into that sales cycle and what we announce accordingly. Devices, same concept. New international distributors that we're able to achieve, new sales milestones that we're able to achieve. So revenue today, that's one element of catalyst and milestone to look out for. The evolution, to look for Stendra progress on the over-the-counter pathway, see what we're able to do with FDA, stay tuned to what we're able to achieve in terms of studies, and see what we're able to do in terms of technology assistance and companies and the like. In terms of Stendra OTC, same concept. Devices, same concept. Mass General, look to see if our sponsored research agreement translates into validated integration with our devices, a tremendous exciting milestone potential. I would tune into that as well. All that to say, look for our profile, stay tuned to our profile. I think you'll realize that the opportunity behind Petros Pharmaceuticals today speaks to a small emerging company that is currently with pharmaceutical and device grade commercially revenue generating assets with the potential to provide landmark achievements and shift and disrupt in both markets, pharmaceutical and device and OTC, in ways that will perform tremendously well, benefiting our stockholders, our shareholders, and the like. With that said, it's a pleasure to be presenting the story to you. Remember that we are early phase, we are emerging, we are excited, we've got tremendous momentum, and we're achieving tremendous milestones already, with many more to come. Contact Jules Abraham with Core IR if you have any questions to follow up. Other than that, it's been a pleasure presenting to you today.